In a world that often mistakes noise for power and volume for value, silence is too quickly misunderstood. We're taught to speak up, to shout louder, to dominate every conversation, as if the loudest voice always wins. But today I want to challenge that idea, because silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom, it's strength, it's self-control. Silence is not the absence of thought, it's often the presence of deeper understanding. It's not about retreat, it's about restraint. It's the choice to listen instead of react, to reflect instead of retaliate, and to lead with calm rather than chaos. Today, I invite you to see silence not as a void, but as a powerful presence. A presence that can change the way we think, speak, and lead. Let's explore how silence, when used with purpose, becomes one of the greatest forms of strength we have. Silence is often misunderstood in today's fast-paced, hyper-connected, and increasingly loud world. We live in a culture that rewards quick responses, immediate reactions, and constant communication. In such an environment, silence can easily be mistaken for weakness, passivity, or even fear. However, the truth is far from this misconception. Silence is not a lack of power. It is the disciplined restraint of someone who possesses emotional strength. The ability to remain silent, especially in moments of pressure, provocation, or conflict, is not an act of submission, but rather a demonstration of control, maturity, and inner resilience. Emotional strength is not defined by the volume of our voice or the frequency of our speech, but by the composure we maintain in moments of emotional intensity. When someone chooses silence in the face of provocation, it does not mean they are incapable of responding or expressing themselves. Instead, it often means they have mastered the ability to regulate their emotions and act with intention. This level of self-awareness and self-regulation is one of the clearest indicators of emotional intelligence, which is widely recognized as a key trait of effective leaders, compassionate individuals, and mentally strong people. Choosing silence is often a sign of someone who does not feel the need to prove themselves to others. People who are emotionally secure understand that reacting impulsively or trying to win every argument is not a measure of success or strength. In fact, many conflicts are escalated not by the initial disagreement, but by the inability to pause, to reflect, and to refrain from saying something destructive in the heat of the moment. Silence, in this context, becomes a tool for de-escalation. It allows emotions to cool down, gives space for rational thought, and prevents unnecessary damage that might be caused by reactive words. In relationships, whether personal or professional, silence can serve as a powerful tool for understanding and empathy. Listening without interrupting, without rushing to fill the space with our own opinions, is a form of emotional discipline. It takes strength to sit with someone's pain, confusion, or anger without trying to immediately fix it or defend ourselves. This kind of silence is not passive, it is active. It is the silence of presence, of being fully engaged, and of allowing others the space to express themselves freely. Only those who are emotionally strong are comfortable enough in themselves to allow that space to exist without feeling the need to dominate it. Furthermore, silence is a deeply reflective practice. Emotionally strong individuals often turn to silence not just in conversations, but in solitude. Taking time to be alone with one's thoughts, to process experiences, and to make decisions with clarity is a sign of inner stability. In a society that glorifies busyness and constant stimulation, the ability to disconnect and sit quietly with oneself is increasingly rare and increasingly powerful. This kind of silence is where growth happens. It is in these quiet moments that people can identify their true feelings, understand their motivations, and align their actions with their values. Silence also shows confidence. When someone is confident in their identity, their abilities, and their worth, they do not feel pressured to constantly explain themselves or seek validation. Emotionally strong individuals are comfortable letting their actions speak louder than their words. They do not need to shout to be heard because they trust that their integrity will shine through over time. They understand that silence can be more commanding than noise, and that restraint can be more powerful than aggression. In professional settings, the ability to remain silent during heated discussions or negotiations is a strategic strength. Those who can manage their emotional impulses and listen attentively often gain a clearer understanding of the situation, allowing them to make more informed and effective decisions. Emotional strength enables a person to assess not only what is being said, but also what is not being said, to read between the lines, to notice nonverbal cues, and to sense the emotional undercurrents of a conversation. This awareness can be the key to building trust, resolving conflict, and leading with empathy. Silence is also a marker of humility. Emotionally strong people do not assume they have all the answers. They are willing to sit in silence and listen to others' perspectives, to absorb new information, and to consider that they might be wrong. This openness requires a level of self-confidence and emotional maturity that allows for vulnerability without defensiveness. In contrast, emotionally fragile individuals often feel the need to fill every silence with their own voice, to assert control through words, and to avoid any moment that might expose uncertainty. Moreover, silence can be an act of resistance. In situations of injustice or confrontation, silence can be used deliberately to withhold energy from a system or person that seeks to provoke, control, or exploit. Choosing not to respond to disrespect, not because one is weak, but because one refuses to be dragged down to that level, is a powerful stance. It is the strength to walk away, to protect one's peace, and to maintain dignity in the face of disrespect. That kind of silence is loud. It speaks volumes about self-respect and inner fortitude. On a more personal level, silence provides a buffer between stimulus and response. Emotionally strong individuals use that buffer to choose how to respond rather than react. That space is where power lies. The power to act with intention, to align response with values, and to avoid regrettable decisions made in the heat of emotion. It is in that moment of silence that we take back control from our impulses and hand it to our reason. In many spiritual and philosophical traditions, silence is revered as a pathway to enlightenment and self-discovery. The practice of stillness is seen not as an escape, but as a return to what matters most. This is not a silence of suppression or avoidance. It is a silence of clarity. Emotionally strong individuals often seek these moments not because they are avoiding the world, but because they are engaging with it in a more meaningful, intentional way. Their strength lies in their ability to quiet the noise around them so they can hear the truth within. It is important to distinguish this kind of empowered silence from silence that stems from fear, shame, or repression. Not all silence is strong, but when silence is a conscious choice, made from a place of clarity and self-control, it reflects a deep-rooted strength. Emotionally strong people are not silent because they are afraid to speak, but because they know that not everything deserves a response, and not every moment requires their voice. They understand that silence can protect energy, preserve relationships, and prevent unnecessary conflict. Society often associates power with dominance and dominance with speech. Yet, history is filled with examples of individuals who made the greatest impact through silence. Think of leaders who stood in silent protest, activists who refused to engage with their oppressors, or mentors who offered silent support instead of unsolicited advice. These moments of silence were not weak, they were deliberate, potent, and transformative. The power of their presence was felt not through what they said, but through what they withheld. In everyday life, emotionally strong individuals understand that silence can be a gift. In times of grief, silence holds space for healing. In moments of joy, it allows us to fully feel. In times of confusion, it gives us time to gather our thoughts. It is a multi-dimensional force that adapts to the needs of the moment. The choice to be silent is a choice to be present, to listen, to understand, and to act with purpose. It is not about withholding emotion, but about channeling it wisely. Children are often taught to use their words, and while communication is undeniably important, we must also teach the value of silence. As people grow and mature, they come to learn that not every situation calls for words. That sometimes the most powerful thing they can do is to remain silent. This lesson, while subtle, is transformative. It shapes the way we navigate challenges, interact with others, and lead ourselves. In times of conflict, silence is often the gateway to peace. It gives people the space to reconsider their positions, to hear themselves think, and to approach each other with fresh eyes. Emotionally strong individuals understand that silence doesn't mean avoiding confrontation, but approaching it from a grounded, intentional place. They recognize that resolution often begins with listening, not just to others, but to themselves. Even in moments of success, emotionally strong people often embrace silence. They do not boast or seek attention because their sense of worth is not dependent on external validation. They are content with quiet achievement, knowing that true success speaks for itself. This restraint is not about modesty for appearance's sake, but about a deep inner confidence that does not crave approval. In a world that moves faster every day, that pushes for constant expression, and that fears the pause between words, the choice to be silent is an act of courage. It is a statement that says, I do not need to shout to be heard. I do not need to react to feel powerful. I do not need to speak to prove my strength, because my silence is not empty. It is full of thought, presence, intention, and power. Self-control in silence speaks louder than impulsive reactions. In a world that thrives on immediate feedback, split-second opinions, and rapid-fire arguments, it is easy to mistake silence for inaction and restraint for weakness. But in truth, silence, when rooted in self-control, holds a power that impulsive reactions can never achieve. It is the strength to pause in the heat of the moment, to listen when every part of us wants to shout, and to hold back when we could lash out. This form of silence is not passive. It is deliberate, disciplined, and deeply rooted in emotional intelligence. The ability to stay silent is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of emotion. Every human being experiences frustration, anger, hurt, and disappointment. These emotions are natural and, at times, even necessary. But what separates the impulsive from the composed is how those emotions are handled. Impulsive reactions often stem from the desire for immediate release, a way to rid oneself of discomfort by externalizing it through words or actions. However, those who have cultivated self-control understand that not every emotion needs to be expressed immediately, and certainly not in a way that causes harm to themselves or others. Silence in this context becomes a filter, a barrier that protects us from acting on emotions that may be temporary but can have permanent consequences. When someone cuts us off in traffic, insults us in public, or challenges our authority in front of others, the knee-jerk response is to fight back. But choosing silence in that moment doesn't mean we agree or that we are weak. It means we are strong enough to resist the urge to make things worse. It means we value peace over ego and wisdom over dominance. The power of self-control in silence is most visible in high-stakes situations where emotions run high and the pressure to respond quickly is intense. In these moments, people often look to the loudest voice for direction. But over time, it is the calmest presence, the person who can maintain composure in chaos, who earns respect and influence. Emotional outbursts may gain attention temporarily, but they often lead to regret, mistrust, and damaged relationships. On the other hand, those who lead with silence and self-control build trust because others know they are not swayed by momentary emotions, but guided by deeper principles. In personal relationships, silence born of self-control can be the key to preventing arguments from turning into battles. Disagreements are inevitable, but the way we handle them determines the health of our connections. When one partner criticizes or provokes, the other has a choice: to retaliate, defend, or respond with patience. Responding with silence doesn't mean shutting down or avoiding the issue. Rather, it creates space. Space for reflection, for emotions to settle, and for both parties to return to the conversation with clarity instead of chaos. In that silence, understanding often grows. Silence also allows us to hear not only the words others speak, but also the meaning behind them. When we are busy preparing our response while someone else is talking, we are not truly listening. But when we practice self-control, when we hold our tongue and stay present, we begin to notice the pain, fear, or insecurity behind another's anger. We begin to understand the motivations that drive certain behaviors, and with understanding comes empathy. That empathy, in turn, strengthens our ability to respond, not react, in a way that heals instead of harms. This discipline extends into the workplace, where silence often speaks volumes about professionalism and leadership. In meetings where opinions clash and tempers flare, the person who stays composed while others spiral into arguments becomes a grounding force. Their silence does not go unnoticed. It communicates thoughtfulness, patience, and strength. And when they finally do speak, their words carry more weight precisely because they were not rushed. Their silence lends their voice credibility, proving that they speak not out of impulse, but out of insight. Impulse, by contrast, is often the root of regret. How many times have people said things they didn't mean in the heat of the moment? How many relationships have been strained or broken by words that were said too quickly, without thought? How many opportunities have been lost because someone reacted instead of reflected? Self-control in silence gives us the gift of time. Time to think, time to process, time to choose the best course of action rather than the fastest. There is also an internal dimension to this silence. Self-control in silence isn't just about what we don't say to others, it's also about what we don't say to ourselves. Our inner dialogue can be filled with criticism, doubt, and fear. The ability to quiet those voices, to resist the urge to spiral into negativity, is a powerful form of self-control. It takes strength to silence the internal narrative that says you're not enough or that you must always defend yourself. That silence becomes a space where self-awareness and self-respect can grow. In the age of social media, where every thought can be instantly broadcast to the world, self-control in silence becomes even more crucial. The temptation to post a reactive comment, to clap back at a critic, or to respond to negativity with more negativity is stronger than ever. But those who practice silence in these digital spaces demonstrate a modern form of strength. They choose not to be drawn into drama. They understand that their energy is precious and that not every insult deserves a reply. This doesn't mean they are disengaged. It means they are discerning. It takes far more courage to remain silent in the face of provocation than to react impulsively. Anyone can shout back, send a nasty message, or escalate a situation. But to pause, to breathe, to wait before responding, these are the marks of someone who is in control of themselves. And self-mastery is the foundation of all other forms of leadership, influence, and peace. It begins with the discipline to manage one's emotions, to act from intention rather than instinct. Silence also allows us to observe more clearly. In any situation, the one who speaks least often sees the most. They are not caught up in defending their point of view or convincing others of their value. Instead, they watch, they listen, and they learn. They pick up on what others miss, the subtle shifts in tone, the body language, the contradictions in speech. And with that knowledge, they are better equipped to navigate challenges with wisdom rather than force. Even in moments of personal injustice, when someone is being wronged or misunderstood, silence can be a form of protest and power. It's not always about fighting back with words. Sometimes, silence becomes a refusal to stoop to the level of those who seek to provoke. It is a way of maintaining dignity when others have lost theirs. This kind of silence is not about letting injustice go unchallenged. It's about choosing the time, place, and manner of one's response with care and precision. It's about responding from power, not from pain. The discipline to stay silent can also be a gift to others. When someone we care about is struggling, we often feel the need to say something, to offer advice or reassurance. But sometimes, what they need most is our quiet presence. Self-control allows us to resist the urge to fix, to fill the silence, and instead simply be with someone in their pain. That kind of silence speaks volumes about love, respect, and understanding. Self-control in silence also enhances our ability to influence others. When we're not reactive, we create space for others to reflect on their own behavior. Our calm becomes a mirror, showing them the contrast between their reaction and our restraint. This can be more powerful than any argument. It shifts the dynamic, often causing the other person to lower their defenses and consider a new perspective. In this way, silence becomes a silent teacher, guiding others not through force, but through example. In the practice of mindfulness and meditation, silence is revered as a tool for inner clarity. When the noise of the world fades, and we are left alone with our thoughts, we begin to see ourselves more clearly. This silence requires self-control because the mind resists stillness. It wants to wander, to speak, to solve. But those who cultivate the ability to sit in silence, to observe without judgment, develop a deep inner strength. They become grounded, unshaken by external chaos, and anchored in their own truth. Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the amplification of meaning. When paired with self-control, it becomes a form of speech that transcends words. It is the pause that makes the music, the breath before the leap, the stillness before the storm passes. It creates room for deeper thinking, for considered action, and for intentional living. It invites us to respond from a place of clarity instead of confusion, from love instead of fear. In this way, self-control in silence becomes a lifelong practice. It is not a one-time achievement, but a constant decision made moment by moment. It requires us to know ourselves deeply, to understand our triggers, and to commit to growth. It asks us to put our values above our impulses and our long-term peace above short-term satisfaction. It teaches us that we do not need to react to everything we feel, and that our silence, when chosen with wisdom, can become our most powerful voice.